For the first stage of this painting, I just wanted to get the lines down. This is burnt umber without any paint thinner, also without any oil to dilute it. Using my tracing method, this took me about an hour. This canvas has been recycled. Originally, there was another painting on the canvas, but I didn't like it, so I painted white over it. Now I'm starting again. Next, I filled in all the white areas with burnt sienna while the burnt umber was still wet. I'm surprised at the colors that came out of the natural mixtures that happened. I can see burnt sienna and places where a lot of burnt umber mixed with my burnt sienna look almost green. Places where just a little bit of burnt umber mixed with my burnt sienna look almost violet. I love the colors of this underpainting. And because the colors are transparent, the white of the canvas shows through when I paint thin. The paint doesn't change color like it does when we add white, which is opaque, and causes the paint to lose its transparency. I like to paint the edges of these thin canvas boards because it gives those who display the painting the option to not frame them. While painting the edges of this painting, my fingers took off some of the paint. Although it was dry to the touch, it was still fragile enough to wipe off. For the branches of the tree, I experimented with burnt umber and cobalt blue, but it made the black too blue, so I went back to cadmium red and cobalt blue, my tried and true. This still looked too saturated. It needed some mud, which is just a mixture of red, yellow, and blue. It didn't quite go as dark as the photo, but I wanted to see how I liked it. I used a mostly blue with red and a little yellow bit of mud for the middle of the berries. The reddish, orangish berries aren't intense, but my red, yellow, blue combo is too intense, even though it's mud. I'm going to experiment and try lemon yellow with a little bit of alizarin crimson, cadmium red, and cadmium yellow mixed with bluish mud berries. No combination of these reds or yellows looked quite right. And then I remembered about yellow ochre. How could I forget cadmium red and yellow ochre? What made me remember was looking through some color swatches that I'd made. These aren't the color swatches that hang on my wall. They're more in-depth swatches that I keep in a book. This did the trick when I mixed it with a few of my other messes that were still on my palette all mixed up. I got a little bit lost with what I was doing, but eventually found a color that I was satisfied with. I remember why I liked doing the background first. The main subject doesn't look so out of place. It's less scary, because color is relative. Alright, now I remember why I'm doing the main subject first. I thought it might help me keep my lines. For the shadows of the berries, I blended straight burnt sienna into the wet paint that was already there. I also brushed in yellow ochre in the main color in a few spots, just to create more dimension because there was a different color there. But dude, I could have totally left some of the underpainting showing for the shadows because the values are very close to the same. At this point, I've spent about 3 hours painting. Getting ready to start painting the leaves in the background, I'm thinking about how what I've done so far has only taken me 3 hours. Lately, I haven't been able to finish a painting in less than 7 hours, and I would very much like to break that record. So I'm reminding myself that the colors don't have to be perfect. The most important thing is value, and the color just needs to be close. Hopefully this tactic works. I think my last step here is to make a brown. I'm almost done with the sky and the background tree. I just need, well, a really dark brown, almost black, for a few more spots in the background, and the shine on the branches. I haven't done yet that either. I've been working on this painting for now a total of 4 hours and 20 minutes, and my background is done. I still want to do a few finishing touches on the berries, but that's really it. I don't know how I feel about it though. It isn't nearly as perfect as my paintings have been in the past, and it makes me nervous. Actually, looking at it some more, part of me does not want to keep the lines in between the leaves on the tree and the ones coming out of the berry. I want to keep those lines, but the ones from the tree I don't really want to keep. So I think I'm actually going to go back in and change that. So I'm not done. I'm going back in. I'll probably lay down and stare at this image for a long time. Then I'll make a few tweaks on the background before it's done. I'm also really proud of myself that, as tempted as I was to break out some other blues and greens, yellows, and mix other colors for the background, I stuck with the yellow and blue I had committed to and found close enough matches that I'm happy and satisfied. Now the background is done. I spent 10 more minutes on it for a total of 4 hours and 30 minutes. This painting is almost done, but I want to go back into the berries and make the highlights lighter and maybe even add more color, more saturation. They look a little bit dull. As I look at the painting, I'm also thinking, is this something I would hang on my wall? I've been thinking about that a lot lately. I'm making these paintings and I'm going off of a style of photography that I developed when I was a photographer, but does that style transfer into painting? There are a lot of painters I admire, but would I put their work on my wall? And I'm not sure. Since I'm not sure, does that mean the answer is no? To mix the color for the finishing touches on the berries, I decided to stick to my original goal of only using cadmium red and cadmium yellow and cobalt blue hue. I'm determined not to go crazy like I did when I originally painted the berries and used all sorts of colors. On the top right, you can see that I just mixed the red and yellow with some white, and it's a very pure saturated color. Just next to that color to the left, I mixed in some blue and more yellow because I wanted a mud to work with in case I needed to tone any of the colors down. I actually took the mud and mixed more white with it. You can see that in the next section to the left. And I thought the mud was closer to the actual color I wanted to do than the saturated original color that I mixed. So I figured that I would mix the mud with white, and then if I needed it more saturated, I could add that in later. I knew that I would need something even lighter for the highlights, so I took some of that color and I mixed it with white on the bottom right. I wanted an even lighter version, so I mixed some of that on the bottom right with more white. You can see my drops of oil. I want these to be available because I want the finishing touches of this part to go on really nice and smoothly, and I want to have a lot of control. And the painting is done in 5 hours and 15 minutes, a new record. Yay! What I did, beyond just adding the colors from my palette on, was I added more blue to the mud color to get it darker and more neutral, and I used that for shadows. I even added a teeny bit more for even deeper shadows. Also, I added yellow to the lightened mud color, and I worked that in so that the berries didn't just seem to be one color lightened, one hue, and that hue lightened, but to give it a little bit more dimensionality, I gave it some yellow, and that's it.